They won't tell you this because they know that if you found out, you'd stop being manipulated. From an early age, you were taught that winning a woman over was a matter of being romantic, kind, and predictable. A cheap manual of idealized love, where pretty phrases are worth more than a cold reading of reality. But Machiavelli had already made his point. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, is the only thing that works. And when it comes to the female mind, nothing is more real than that. The truth no one admits is brutal. Whoever masters the questions controls the direction of the game. It's not the prettiest nor the strongest, but the one who knows how to weaponize curiosity. The end justifies the means when what's at stake isn't just desire, but the invisible power that keeps someone trapped in its orbit. The right question doesn't win applause, it wins silence. And silence is where truth bleeds. This video isn't about ready-made phrases for conquest, it's about the hidden game few have the courage to play. Here, you'll understand why being loved can be sweet, but being respected is non-negotiable. You'll discover how simple questions expose deep weaknesses and how the female mind responds not to the theater of apparent virtue, but to the subtle strength of those who know when to keep quiet and when to cut. If this already sounds uncomfortable, it's because you're about to see how Machiavelli dismantles the myth of ideal love and transforms dialogue into a battlefield. The hidden power of a well-asked question, a well-posed question, is like a blade hidden beneath the cloak of curiosity. Those who know how to wield it understand that there is nothing more effective in disarming someone than making them speak willingly. This is where Machiavelli's forgotten lesson comes in. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, requires extracting from others what they wouldn't give up spontaneously. When a man learns to ask strategic questions, he discovers that there's no need for shouting or confrontation. A simple, "Why do you think that?" at the right moment is enough to dismantle certainties and expose weaknesses. What seems like innocent dialogue is, in fact, the calculated use of force. It's like gently pushing a boulder at the top of a mountain. The rest of the avalanche happens on its own. No one admits it, but questions are weapons, and those who don't know how to use them always end up playing into the other person's hands. Questions not only reveal, but also guide. What seems like idle chatter is, in fact, manipulation at its most elegant. Imagine a woman accustomed to being admired for her veneer of virtue. A simple question can drive her to the wall without her even realizing it. And if no one admired you for that anymore, what would be left of you? The question cuts deep because it doesn't accuse, it doesn't attack, it simply invites reflection. And in that invitation, it forces the emptiness behind the mask to be exposed. This is where power manifests itself. The questioner doesn't need to commit to anything, simply casts doubt and observes the devastating effect. This is Machiavellian virtue applied to communication, the art of moving the other person while you remain immobile with control in your hands. Is it better to be feared than loved? Perhaps the right question can make someone fear disappointing you without you having to raise your voice. Want a brutal example? Try asking on a date, "What was the last lie you told to protect yourself?" It sounds like a joke. It even sounds intimate. But watch what happens. The mind freezes, the body becomes restless, and the answer, whatever it may be, reveals much more than words. This is the essence of a politics guided by reality. Not believing what someone says, but what someone unintentionally reveals. The right question not only uncovers secrets, but creates a silent imbalance that puts you in a position of advantage. It's a power play disguised as dialogue, and those who don't see this are constantly being manipulated without realizing it. The hidden power of the question is so dangerous that many avoid using it for fear of being hated. but those who dare understand that the silence following an answer is even more deafening than the question itself. And it is there, in this emptiness, that we begin to touch upon the next secret, the appearance of virtue. Appearance of virtue. The appearance of virtue is the most valuable counterfeit currency in the social market. Machiavelli already warned, it's not necessary to be virtuous, it's enough to appear so. The world rewards performance, not substance. The entire society is a theater where applause is given to those who wear the right mask well. The curious thing is that even in intimate relationships, this logic prevails. A woman can cloak herself in an image of purity, kindness, or fragility, not because she believes it, but because she knows it's the shield that grants her power. Men, in turn, are dazzled by this veneer and forget to investigate what lies beneath. This is where politics guided by reality, not ideals, proves indispensable. Don't trust what meets the eye, but what the right questions reveal. Those who cling to the surface are manipulated. Those who dare to touch the subterranean discover the game. The problem is that the appearance of virtue creates a cruel dilemma. Those who naively believe in it become easy prey. Those who directly question it become hated. And here arises the Machiavellian paradox. It is better to be feared than loved, but never hated. What does this mean in practice? That it is not enough to tear off the mask. It must be made to fall on its own. The strategy lies in asking questions that gradually erode the constructed facade. Instead of confronting a woman by saying, "You only pretend to be this way," simply insinuate, "Have you ever wondered where this need to constantly display strength comes from?" The mask trembles because the person is forced to look at the inner hole they try to hide. The calculated use of force lies not in shouting or accusing, but in choosing the exact point where doubt undermines certainty. And see how this applies to everyday life. We all know someone who constantly presents themselves as altruistic, as if goodness were their essence. Ask this person in an almost innocent tone, "Do you help because you love, or because you need to be seen as someone who loves?" The answer, no matter which, already destroys the pedestal. This is the power of those who understand that the appearance of virtue is merely a survival resource, not a moral truth. It is virtue manifesting itself, not fighting the pretense, but using the pretense against those who created it. The game here is not to seek purity, but to dismantle the emotional trap that imprisons, and it is in this movement that the most uncomfortable revelation arises. When the mask begins to slip, so too do the most hidden weaknesses. And this is precisely where we enter the next territory, questions that reveal weaknesses, questions that reveal weaknesses. Every fortress has a crack. Most people spend their lives trying to hide it with speeches, poses, and appearances. But those who master the art of strategic questioning don't need to attack walls. They just need to touch the right crack. Machiavelli knew that decisions based on true human nature can only be made when one understands the fear that paralyzes the other. And how do you uncover this fear? By asking. There is no official interrogation more effective than a simple conversation masked by interest. When was the last time you felt small in front of someone? This question, for example, elicits from the other not just an episode, but the confession of their power wound. And most disturbingly, the answerer feels like they've given up something intimate without anyone demanding it. It's the end justifying the means in its most subtle form, because the means here are just words. Questions that reveal weakness aren't offensive, but intimate, and that's precisely why they work. They penetrate emotional defenses because they don't seem threatening. The calculated use of force, in this case, isn't about pushing, but about gently pulling. It's about asking in an almost curious, almost naive way, and watching the other person's mind twist. Imagine a man asking a woman, "What scares you most about being alone at night?" It sounds like idle chatter, but observe the trap. The answer isn't about the night, it's about loneliness, vulnerability, unresolved trauma. It's at that moment that the armor breaks. Those who master this art have something more valuable than compliments. They have direct access to the point of greatest weakness, the one no one shows in public. The cruelest thing is that once a weakness is revealed, it cannot be removed from the table. It's like a secret that never returns to the darkness. The interrogator gains an invisible advantage, a power that doesn't need to be used immediately, but remains there, latent, ready to be activated. And then arises the Machiavellian question: what to do with this information? Turn it into a weapon of manipulation or use it as a way to create a deep connection. Herein lies the dilemma of power. The same knowledge that can liberate you can also imprison you. Questions reveal weaknesses because they force a person to expose their naked humanity without the veneer of virtue. But it is at this point that an even more tense game arises. The dilemma between love and respect. The dilemma between love and respect. There's a brutal truth no one likes to admit. Love without respect is emotional charity, but respect without love still generates power. Machiavelli made this clear when he stated that it's better to be feared than loved, as long as one avoids being hated. This dilemma, applied to human relationships, is more real than any pretty-covered novel. Many strive to be loved, believing this is the path to acceptance, but what happens in practice? They become malleable, predictable, and easy to manipulate. Love that isn't supported by respect turns into pity, and pity is the cheapest currency in the emotional market. When someone asks, "Do you respect me or do you just like me?" they're exposing the core wound of relationships, the choice between the fragility of approval and the strength of recognition. Love, at its core, is desire. Respect, on the other hand, is territory. Love can be earned with gestures, flowers, and rehearsed phrases, but respect only arises when there is a perception of power. And this is where the calculated use of force comes in. It's not enough to win affection, you have to impose your presence. The man who seeks only to be loved finds himself a slave to other people's validation. The one who demands respect, even at the risk of being misunderstood, ends up occupying the leadership space. Think about the workplace. The nice boss, beloved by all, is usually the most ignored. Meanwhile, the leader who imposes clear boundaries, even if criticized in silence, is the one who pulls the team where he wants. Politics guided by reality shows that without respect, love is a flash in the pan. And in intimate relationships, the same rule applies. How many couples experience a fragile love because there's no mutual admiration? Ask a woman, what do you value more in a man? Someone who makes you feel protected or someone who never disagrees with you? The answer will almost always reveal a thirst for respect. Flowers are useless if there's no firmness. Compliments are useless if there's no sense of unwavering presence. Love can generate momentary warmth, but respect generates stability. The game, however, is risky. If you seek only to be feared, you become tyranny. If you seek only to be loved, you become weakness. It's in the balance between virtù and fortuna that true mastery lies. But to play this game masterfully, something even more difficult is required, mastering the strategic silence that follows the question. The strategic silence after the question. Silence is the most underrated weapon in the communication arsenal. After asking a question that cuts deep, the first speaker usually loses. Machiavelli knew that decisions based on true human nature are revealed in discomfort. The human mind cannot tolerate emptiness. When you ask a cutting question and remain silent, the other person feels compelled to fill that space, and in doing so, they end up revealing much more than they intended. It is at this moment that reality-driven politics proves relentless. It's not the volume of your voice that matters, but the patience to let silence eat away at the other person's defenses. This interval is like an invisible blade. It cuts not by force, but by waiting. Strategic silence is disconcerting because it reverses roles. Those who should be in control of the conversation find themselves destabilized, as if being judged by an invisible court. Imagine asking the question, "What do you hide from yourself so you don't face someone at night?" And simply remaining silent, looking into their eyes. The other person's body speaks, rapid breathing, nervous gestures, averted gaze. The answer, when it arrives, isn't just verbal, it's a whole package of unconscious confessions. This is the calculated use of force, not interrupting, not rushing, but sustaining the emptiness until the person betrays themselves completely. Few have the courage to endure this discomfort, and that's why few master this art. A practical and cruel example. In a negotiation, calmly ask, "What's the most you can offer?" and then remain silent. Silence will corrode the other person like acid. They may even beat around the bush, make excuses, but sooner or later, they'll deliver more value than they intended. The same applies in intimate relationships. After asking something profound, like, "Do you really trust me?" silence becomes an uncomfortable mirror where the person sees their own contradictions reflected. This is the moment when respect begins to emerge, not because of what you said, but because of what you maintained without saying. And this is where the game of loyalty begins to insinuate itself, because if silence already exposes, imagine what happens when the question serves to test the most intimate fidelity. Questions that test loyalty. Loyalty is the rarest currency in the human game. Everyone swears they're loyal, but almost no one is when the pressure is on. That's why Machiavelli said that loyal armies are worth more than any temporary alliance. And in the realm of personal relationships, this principle doesn't change. Testing loyalty is exposing how willing someone is to remain when the winds change. The right question here works like a psychological lie detector. If one day I lost everything, would you still stay by my side? Simple, direct, almost banal, yet devastating, because it doesn't just test feelings, but measures the extent to which respect overcomes selfishness. This is politics guided by reality, not ideals. Not believing in love while everything is going well, but investigating whether it survives when fortune turns against you. The dilemma is that loyalty questions almost always create discomfort. The person may answer what they think you want to hear, but the body betrays what the mind tries to hide. Averted gaze, a long pause, a hesitant tone. All these betray the rift. And here comes the calculated use of force. It's not about forcing the person to answer immediately, but about mentally recording every sign of incoherence. True power lies not in believing the spoken word, but in observing what escapes it. Asking, "If someone spoke ill of me to your face, would you defend me or remain silent?" isn't just curiosity. It's placing the person before an uncomfortable mirror where their loyalty must choose between virtue and convenience. And see how this can be applied in everyday life. How many friends have you had who disappeared at the first sign of a misstep? How many people swore to be with you forever and disappeared when the end justified their means, not yours? A simple loyalty question works like a vaccine. It reveals in advance who will abandon you on the battlefield. Machiavelli would call this constant adaptability, not deluding yourself with promises, but creating tests that expose the truth before betrayal occurs. Because loyalty isn't asked for, it's proven. And it's precisely at this point that the game becomes even more dangerous. When vulnerability enters the picture and manipulation masquerades as intimacy. Manipulation by vulnerability. Every vulnerability is an open door, and those who understand this see what most prefer to deny. Intimacy is at once a space of affection and a silent battlefield. Machiavelli knew that the end justifies the means, and in this realm, the most powerful means is to extract from the other the confession of what most weakens them. There's no need for torture, no pressure, just create a sense of safety and wait. Human beings by nature need to be heard. They need to pour their pain out to someone. When a woman exposes her loneliness, her traumas, her insecurities, she believes she's being welcomed, but in reality, she's handing over weapons. Politics guided by reality shows that those who listen attentively become possessors of information that can be used to both console and dominate. The oldest trick of manipulation is to make someone feel in control, while in reality, they're opening up like a book. Tell me, what hurt you most in your childhood? This question, as sweet as it sounds, is a scalpel that opens unhealed scars. And the answer is golden, because whoever reveals their pain also reveals the map of their future decisions. A woman who confesses a fear of abandonment, for example, is already telling you exactly how she can be kept under control. Simply hinting at the possibility of abandonment will make her give in. It's cruel, it's uncomfortable, but it's real. It's the calculated use of force without lifting a finger, just exploiting the human reflex to seek shelter. Machiavelli would call this virtue knowing how to use another's own vulnerability as a lever of power. The most disturbing thing is that manipulation through vulnerability is rarely perceived. Unlike overt aggression, it disguises itself as affection, empathy, even love. It's the friend who listens only to accumulate secrets. It's the partner who encourages confessions only to turn them into ammunition in a future argument. Vulnerability, when mismanaged, becomes an invisible leash. Those who reveal too much chain themselves. Those who listen in silence accumulate power. And here the uncomfortable question arises. To what extent is it ethical to use this information? The dilemma is never moral, it's strategic. Because those who master this game don't need to raise their voice. They simply let the other person dig their own way. And it is in this scenario of silent power that the sharpest weapon emerges, verbal force transformed into an instrument of command. The calculated use of verbal force words are invisible blades. Unlike a physical blow, they don't leave visible bruises, but bleed from within. Machiavelli, observing true human nature, knew that power doesn't need to be wielded by steel, but by words. The calculated use of verbal force is therefore the art of measuring each word like one measuring gunpowder. One syllable more and everything explodes, one less and the impact is lost. It's not shouting, it's not imposing oneself through violent tone, but rather delivering phrases at the precise moment so the other person's mind can't escape. Have you realized that no one really understands you? A simple, almost friendly phrase, but one that can silently corrode entire days. Verbal power lies not in volume, but in precision. Those who master this technique understand that speech isn't meant to convince, but to destabilize. When you choose words that touch raw wounds, it doesn't matter if the other person disagrees. They're already reacting. This is the end, justifies the means in its purest form. Using the power of language to move others, even when they're uncomfortable. And note, this isn't limited to intimate conversations. A leader who looks at their team and asks, "Do you really think you delivered all you could?" isn't asking for an answer. They're sowing the corrosive doubt that generates action. The calculated use of verbal force is strategic because it doesn't seek harmony, it seeks impact. It's the kind of power that doesn't demand applause, but inevitably commands respect. And in relationships, this technique can become even more dangerous. A phrase thrown at the right moment can become an emotional prison. Imagine an argument where, instead of reacting with arguments, someone blurts out, "Interesting. You always run away when you feel you're wrong, don't you?" There you go. There's no defense against it. The mind freezes because the accusation has already planted itself as a truth difficult to refute. This is the calculated use of force, not wasting energy on long wars, but striking directly at the point where the enemy disarms itself. Machiavelli would call this virtue in action, the ability to transform words into invisible troops, capable of winning battles without a sword ever being drawn. But the game doesn't stop there, because when words assume this level of power, they cease to be mere tools and become weapons of seduction, turning questions into weapons of seduction. Seduction isn't in touch, nor in a look, but in the invisible play of words that cross the mind. Machiavelli, if I were speaking of love, would say that even in bed, politics should be guided by reality, not ideals. Questions, when well posed, are more erotic than any physical gesture because they disarm reason and expose raw desire. What have you never told anyone about what truly turns you on? Look, there's no way to answer that without baring not only the body, but also the soul. Questions like these are like silent arrows. They strike the blind spot of intimacy, forcing the other to reveal themselves. Is it better to be feared than loved? Perhaps in seduction, it's better to be remembered as the one who made a mark by daring to ask what no one would dare. The power of the seductive question lies in its ambiguity. While it appears to be curiosity, it is also an invitation. It's like extending an invisible hand and pulling the other person's mind into a territory of pleasurable vulnerability. What's your biggest secret when you're alone? A simple question, but one that immediately sparks tension. The person's brain begins to fill in the blanks, create images, project fantasies. The power here lies not in exposing one's own desire, but in forcing the other person to confront their own. This is a calculated use of verbal force, giving nothing away but extracting everything. It transforms the silence after the question into an energy-charged space, where each second feels like an eternity. And the most dangerous thing is that this technique works not only in the realm of pleasure, but also in that of emotional domination. Those who master the art of transforming questions into weapons of seduction can lead without ever needing to expose themselves. It can create psychic dependence because each question opens a delicious wound, the kind that hurts but the person wants to feel again. Machiavelli would call this virtue applied to the heart, transforming vulnerability into a terrain of conquest. The other finds themselves answering, surrendering, confessing, and without realizing it, becoming emotionally tied to the interrogator. And if questions can seduce, they can also imprison. Which brings us to the final act of this game. Machiavelli himself inserted into the realm of the female mind, where manipulation becomes almost a science. Machiavelli and the game of the female mind. If Machiavelli had written a manual exclusively about women, he probably wouldn't speak of flowers or promises, but of what few dare admit, the mental game. The female mind, with its subtlety and depth, doesn't yield to obvious gestures. It moves by symbols, by subtext, by what is felt, not said. This is why politics guided by reality, not ideals, also applies here. Those who believe in fairy tales end up being manipulated. Those who see true human nature learn to move on the same board. A woman can feign innocence. She can wear the appearance of virtue, but she is always testing, observing how you react to pressure, silence, and challenge. It's not she who loses when you ask disconcerting questions. It's you if you don't know how to answer. The female mind game is sophisticated because it blends desire and strategy. It's not just about love or respect, but the constant dance between vulnerability and power. Machiavelli would say that the end justifies the means when the goal is to maintain a position of influence. And often, women use their vulnerability as a mask of strength, or their strength as a mask of fragility. Asking, "What do you secretly hope I never find out about you?" is opening the black box where these games hide. The answer, even when vague, is a map of insecurities, secrets, and the points where power is balanced. Is it better to be feared than loved? Perhaps in the realm of seduction, it's better to be unpredictable than predictable, because predictability is the death of attraction. The man who understands this game doesn't try to win it through brute force, but through constant adaptability. He doesn't seek to destroy the female mind, but to navigate within it like someone learning a new language. He knows when to use silence, when to use questions, when to use verbal force, and when to retreat. This is the balance between virtù and fortuna, knowing that the female mind is a labyrinth, and that true power lies not in trying to simplify it, but in dancing with its complexity. This is where Machiavelli and psychology meet, in the awareness that every relationship is, at its core, a symbolic battlefield. And if questions have been weapons up until now, in the game of the female mind, they become crowns, capable of transforming a simple dialogue into dominance. But of course, every crown comes with a price. Now that you understand the hidden power of questions, the mask has fallen. There is no neutrality in this game. Either you learn to ask, or you will forever be the one answering. Machiavelli knew those who live trapped in the desire to be loved become predictable, but those who demand respect become inevitable. The dilemma is simple. Would you rather be the one asking the question or the one who stammers in the face of silence? Look at your own relationships and answer this. How many times have you given away secrets because you couldn't stand the emptiness after a question? How many times have you believed in a veneer of virtue and only realized too late that you were being manipulated? The question now isn't whether this happens, but whether you'll continue to accept it. So I ask you, will you use this knowledge to protect yourself or to dominate? Will you remain a piece on the board, or will you finally move the pieces? If this video tore you apart, it's because the game has already begun. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and be here for the next cut, because only those who dare to face the truth can turn the board around.